I write about the enterprise software industry at Bloomberg, write about a lot of vendors who speak about how data and AI are rapidly being ready to change how a lot of companies function, customer experiences. Super excited today to speak with Alon Amit. He oversees data and AI at Intuit, a company known for TurboTax, also has QuickBooks, MailChimp, Credit Karma. And he's been able to implement some pretty exciting stuff already, which is really particularly interesting with a company that has grown through acquisition. We all know that that leads to, or can lead to, some pretty big difficulties. And so I'm really excited to hear from you. And maybe we could start off with TurboTax, because it's tax season. I would wager over 50% of people in this room use the product, and we notice some new bells and whistles. So can you tell us a bit about how you've kind of used AI to change the experience already in that app?
Sure, thank you, and you're welcome, everyone. If you have used TurboTax in the last season, you might have noticed, I know this because I literally heard from friends coming up to me and said, hey, that was pretty cool. When people engage with the product, we're now able to offer, for example, explanations inside while you're using TurboTax and you're wondering why this happened, why that happened, or why this year's return is different from last year's. We can literally offer these explanations, and they come from a generative AI model, not from a human expert. So that's one way we were able to
awesome.
help people out.
Is something like this, is this difficult? Is it as simple as, hey, we already have this customer profile, hit it with an LLM? What's different? I mean, was this tough to implement?
You don't really expect me to say yes, right? No, it was not easy. It was not easy. None of these things, we've heard before from Fiona and Andrew and Charu. The technology is great, but it's never the kind of thing that you just throw away the product and say, hey, go help this customer, you genius LLM, and it just works. That's never the case. In the case of tax, there's many layers of understanding the tax code and knowing why actually what just happened, and then framing it in a language that a human can understand. It takes a lot of effort, and honestly, this is just one of the ways we're leveraging the technology today. Layers starting from, you mentioned the complexity of a company that has grown through acquisition, so just having the data available to the model at the moment when it's needed, the correct data, fresh, and then understanding the environment, the world, the customer. All this knowledge takes significant effort to do.
Absolutely. And so maybe it's not surprising that AI came to the forefront of a lot of people's brain in the last year and a half due to ChatGPT, a chatbot. That has led almost every vendor to say, take a look at this chatbot we built, right? Now you can talk with the chatbot. But you're a little bit of a chatbot hater. You think that's not the right approach. Tell us about that.
We spoke before, and you did brand me a chatbot hater. So, look, there is, first of all, the whole world was exposed to the technology through ChatGPT. I'm sure many of you have seen this and have played around with it. And there was, in corporations like Intuit and many others, there was this expectation that the universe is now waiting for us to offer a chat experience to do taxes, a chat experience to book airline tickets with Alaska Airlines, or what have you. Now, there are instances where customers are interested in asking questions, for sure. But if you think about the way we help small businesses in QuickBooks, it's not the right thing to do to have this experience that says, all right, good morning, small business owner. Ask me anything. Because if you say ask me anything, for most people it's like, what would you like me to ask? And what can I ask? And what sort of questions would be helpful? And our internal push, the technologists inside of Intuit, our internal push for our product designers was to say, if there is something helpful we can tell the customer, let's just tell them that. Let's not wait for them to ask us a question and go, oh yeah, I can help you with that. There are many advantages to doing it this way. We can be proactive. People don't necessarily know how to engage with such a language model. And we can even spend more time thinking. If we want to offer insights every day to a small business owner, we can spend the entire night, the model can spend the entire night thinking, rather than having to respond within 5 seconds to a question that just came in. Again, many of you who've interacted with ChatGPT may have noticed it doesn't always respond immediately. It takes some time. And in the context of taxes or finance or small business, or if a MailChimp customer asks the system to generate an email campaign, it could take a lot of time. much better if you can spend time leveraging the smarts of the language models to think about what can we do for the customer? How can we help? What insights do we see there, and what can we offer to them that they might not even have thought to ask? So, not to trash chatbots, there are instances, there are situations where people really want to come in and ask a question. That's very legitimate. But I've noticed early on myself, as we were thinking about these things, that many product designers were thinking ChatGPT as kind of the way to leverage LLMs, and that's literally not true. You can do many things with LLMs that are not conversational.
I agree. I always think it's very interesting when we get pitches from companies that show us, here's how we're implementing LLMs in kind of this non-obvious way, a way that maybe you wouldn't have imagined.
Right.
And of course, to implement any of these technologies, what you really need is clean and accessible data, which at a company of any scale can be pretty difficult. I know you've done a lot of work here with AWS, with Databricks, getting the Intuit house in order. I wonder if you can just tell us a bit about that journey, maybe some of the little tidbits you can pull out of what people should think about.
Yeah. We're lucky that we started the journey of coming to terms with our own data about 5 years ago. You may have seen our CEO, Sasan Goodarzi, was declaring Intuit an AI-driven expert platform 5 years ago. And there was a realization that to get this to happen, we really need to make sure that the data is well organized. And as many people have discussed earlier, that's never easy. It's never easy at any company. It's never easy at a large company. And it's certainly not easy at a company that grew through acquisitions and has technologies of various kinds and has just shifted to the cloud as we did 6-7 years ago. So this was a long journey. And I think a few things that I would say about this. There are some concepts out there that I would encourage people to learn about if you're curious about them. Something called the data mesh, which we were inspired by. We didn't exactly implement it this way, but it's an interesting concept. It's sort of an evolution of an earlier idea called the data lake. Many of you may have heard about a data lake, and if you talk to technologists nowadays in big companies, they would say, yes, we have a data lake, and by now it's pretty much a data swamp. That's not uncommon because the data lake was meant as this repository, like single source of truth, single repository, all the data is there, and sure, all the data is there, and I think Fiona mentioned before, there are thousands of tables and tens of thousands of databases, and nobody knows what they do, they're not described, and it's just a mess. To empower an organization to get data to a good place is not just a matter of organizing the data, it's shifting the culture. It's getting the developers, the data scientists, anyone who produces data or consumes data to understand that data is a product. People will need to use it, and to use it well, they need to understand what it is, what it does, what it does not, what are its characteristics, and who owns it. How do you even get access to it? We've had scenarios years ago when you see a table and like, oh, that's an interesting table. I would like to get access to it. You don't have access. All right, how do I get access? I don't know. You have to find who owns the table and go, Slack them and ask them for access. That's changed now, but getting that to change was a significant undertaking. Just to catalog the data, have it have explicit owners, and have the owners understand that they are now stewards of that data. So I would say the journey is not merely technological. It's very much a people and process kind of thing. It's very much a culture kind of thing. But if you get to a place where people understand that, and every time an engineer develops a new product, and they know that their product generates data, and other people at the company may need this data, they cannot even necessarily imagine who they are, but it's okay. Just making sure that their own data is well built, well documented, and the technology underlying this makes it easy for them. It's not hard work. The data team inside of Intuit created the technology that made it easier for the developers, for the analysts, for the data scientists to create those things easily, document them easily, and remain stewards for a long time.
Nice. These kind of transformations, they're not cheap. Vendor costs, people costs. At the end of the day, we all have to make a slide deck to show why our work was valuable. What was the ROI you saw? How did you quantify the results here?
So obviously cannot speak numbers in our quiet period, but this transformation, again, 5 years in the making, I would argue that literally none of the innovative products that we've launched over the past 2 years could even have been possible without it. So if you look at the past results, the company is growing very well. I would argue a huge portion of that would not have been possible had we not invested in our data transformation and later on in our AI transformation. And recently in the Gen AI transformation, we've spoken about this in the past. We've created an operating system around generative AI, literally an operating system called Gen OS, so that developers can build generative AI-based applications like they do. Like people need an operating system. They don't have to reintroduce guardrails, reintroduce many features that the operating system just gives them. And again, I would argue the ROI on that was just making any of those things even possible. It would either have been completely impossible, or it would have taken 10x longer to ship any of those features. And we've shipped a bunch of cool stuff last year, and I promise we will ship more stuff in the coming years.
I'm ready for tax season next year. I'm ready to look for the new bells.
It's going to be amazing.
I'm sure that you got peers in similar roles. You all go out for drinks. You hear some horror stories on data transformations. What are the common mistakes you hear?
Many. So people have spoken before about the challenges of hallucinations, generative AI, sometimes not saying accurate things. And I think that's well known by now, well understood. But there are many other layers of challenges with such a technology. One of the things I've observed is, I sometimes call it, it's better not to have the data than to think you have the data, or you think you understand the data. Like the worst thing the only thing worse than a person who doesn't have access to the right data is a person who thinks they have access to the right data. Bad documentation, stale tables, stale data is literally worse than not having data at all. When systems talk to customers, MasterCard, Alaska Airlines, when people buy airline tickets or shop at Wayfair or look at their credit card statements, if the system says, I don't have yesterday's data, then it doesn't have yesterday's data. If the system says, I have yesterday's data, but it shows something wrong, that's a lot worse. So building guardrails for that, making sure that you want fresh data, but you have to be careful that the fresh data is actually correct. Sometimes you may have to go back and correct things because you detected fraud or something else happened. So it's a difficult balance to strike, but it's very important to strike it because, again, you want to make sure you have fresh data, but it's very important that you have accurate data first and foremost. I can go on.
Absolutely. We have an audience question, which I think gets at something everyone's worried about, cybersecurity, right? How do you, when you have a vendor that comes to you, their product sounds cool, maybe it's SaaS, maybe it's a workplace application, maybe it's a new LLM, how do you sniff out what's safe? Because it's not always, right? How do you figure out which vendors are worthy of your trust, whether it's on a cyber level or just investing time and money with them?
Yeah, there are many vendors out there, and sometimes it's the engineers. Sometimes they read something online, they find some open source system, and they're super excited to bring it in. At a company such as Intuit, as you can imagine, and I think Andrew mentioned before, anywhere around financial, we have to be very, very careful. So some of our partners, like AWS, are the biggest and best out there. It was, of course, a process to get them in, but once they're there, we can rely on their technologies and rely also on their expertise to keep their cloud systems safe. We do work with other vendors, and we do work with open source systems, for sure. But how we work with them, we have a massive security, risk, fraud, cybersecurity organizations. We have whole processes for responsible AI and the products that we ship externally to vet them, to test them, to make sure that they are transparent, accurate, safe, private, et cetera, et cetera. So in the process of vetting vendors, this actually literally happens every week. There are companies out there who are pitching their technologies at us, and there's a first filter where you have to say, is it even worth my time to get into a POC with this person, or to even do the due diligence to see how well thought out their security processes are. But we do this every day. Like, there are many vendors out there with amazing technologies, and we try to be cautious about how many we bring in. You can't maintain a system that is built on like 16 different vendors to do one thing. But I think we choose well, and we have some very, very good partners in place that help us.
It's a trend I hear that more and more big companies want to standardize on a couple of trusted vendors versus if like in the pandemic, people were signing up with 200 different SaaS tools, right? I mean, this is kind of how you're feeling.
I noticed that. I think I don't have like numbers,
Sure.
but I noticed, just like you said, that a couple of years ago, there was like almost everything like, come on, let's use it, let's do it. It's so cool. Now we ourselves, and I'm sure many others, have felt the burden of having to sustain so many different vendors, having to keep up with their changes. We like having best of breed, and luckily there are many out there. LLMs right now are proliferating all over the place. But many of these companies actually are very responsible. Some of them came from some of the biggest software houses out there, and they do a really good job at ensuring safety and security for their products. Yeah.
Intuit's more than TurboTax and the other applications you have. Do you have any other interesting, uses of AI? I heard that you've done some cool work around invoices.
We do a lot of work around automating small businesses. If you kind of take a step back and think about a small business. Small businesses are oftentimes someone's life's passion. Like they really are interested in the small business. They're not interested in doing their books. They're not interested in copying data from one system to another. They're not interested in, they want the business to flourish. And if you look 10 years ago at a company like Intuit, the products were basically getting you through the motions, but not necessarily proactively thinking with you and how can the business do better. Even something as simple as if you think about like sending invoice reminders, every small business needs to get paid. And it's a chore, and it's a lot of work, just knowing who hasn't paid, and did I email them already, and when should I email them, and what tone of voice should I be using. Things like this can be helped with automation, can be helped with language models. Small businesses who run marketing campaigns, if any of you has a small business, if you try to do this at any scale, that's a lot of work. People spend hundreds of hours a month just typing and thinking through like what's my new message? How do I announce my new product? Who should I email this to, and how should I rephrase it and use the correct tone and imagery, etc. Large language models are very suited for that task. And again, as people mentioned, with human in the loop, we're not going to be sending email campaigns on your behalf without letting you see them. And people are very picky and it's very personal. So they want to make sure that the message has the right tone and has the right images, has the right colors, but we can shorten the process by like 90%. If we give them like, here are 6 creatives you can use. Do you like them? Yes. Use this one. Which audience should I use this with? I can give you a great recommendation. Does this sound right? Let's ship it out there. Saving tons of time and letting people focus on creating the next sculpture for Etsy that they're so excited to build. Absolutely.
Are there any emerging technologies you've seen recently that made you say, man, I can't wait till we can implement this into our products?
This morning? It happens a lot. People mentioned code copilots and coding, like making your internal teams more productive. Again, there's many systems out there. I happened to speak this morning with a 5-person startup that did a really amazing job at creating a coding system that is more than a code copilot, more than a software engineer's aid. It was literally like sitting on your ticketing system, and every ticket it sees that it can fix, it just fixes. So people use the product, people can build tickets, and the tickets just get eaten up. As an example, things like this happen again. I'm sure you've seen this. It's a very innovative time we're in right now. Just a matter of keeping your eyes and ears open, and that's why you're here, right? To see what's going on.
Awesome. When you got your own data house in order and you were able to implement some of these more efficient processes, was there one thing you realized you all were kind of spending the most time on that you didn't need to be?
I think earlier, I think maybe Fiona mentioned this. Just the fact that you have all this data and it's a swamp. We didn't realize just how if you look at an analyst at your company, an analyst that just needs to provide a report to their manager. If you look at their journey and how much time they're spending not producing the report, not thinking about what's the insight here, how much time are they spending looking for the data? How much time they're spending vetting the data that they're seeing? How much time they're spending literally waiting for approval to access a certain table? and after waiting for 2 weeks, they have access to the table, and it's not the table they need, and they have to start over. The amount of time people spend on this silliness is really heartbreaking when we look back. And again, we're in much, much better shape now. But until we looked into that, we didn't even realize how bad it was. And it was pretty bad. Again, 3 years ago. It's much better now.
All right. Alon Amit, thank you so much for sharing these great insights with us.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brody.